right, I would like to call the February 22nd, 2022 council meeting to order. And ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Dr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Mullins.
Here.
Mr. Chambers.
Here.
Ms. Walden.
Here.
Ms. Shinholster.
Here.
Mr. Reynolds.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum present, so we can proceed with our meeting at this time. If you will, please stand for the prayer and the pledge with me. Gracious God, we thank you tonight for allowing us to meet together to conduct the business of this city. We thank you for each individual person represented here, Lord, that our minds be open, our ears be open, and that we see the needs and meet the needs of our community. We thank you for continuing to take care of us throughout this pandemic. For we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we know that you hold it. And we thank you right now for continuing to take care of our doctors and our nurses, our first responders, our teachers, our bus drivers, our children, and our community. We thank you, Lord, because of your grace and your mercy. So this is your servant's prayer tonight, that you continue to bless us, keep us, and take care of us as we take care of the business of this city. And everyone said, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have a presentation tonight, and at this time, I would like to welcome Mr. David Irwin from Malden and Jenkins to the meeting. He is here to give us an annual audit report. David, I invite you to the podium for your presentation at this time.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you all are doing well. Again, my name is David Irwin, and I'm with Malden Jenkins. I was the partner who oversaw this year's audit of the city's financial statements, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this evening to discuss with you the results of this year's audit. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the purpose of this evening's presentation is to provide you all an overview of our independent auditor's report, talk about the results of the 2 compliance reports that we issue in conjunction with the audit, hit a few of the financial statement highlights, discuss some information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all, and to answer any questions that you all may have. Now, the financial statements themselves, they are the responsibility of city's management and members of the council. As your independent auditor, our responsibility is to issue an opinion on these statements. Now, we conducted our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards and governmental auditing standards, and I'm happy to say that we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on this year's report. This is what you want. This is the highest level of assurance that we can provide as your independent auditor. What this means is that, in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. As part of the audit, there are 2 compliance reports that we also issue, the first of which being the single audit report. Again, the single audit is a compliance audit that is required when an entity has over $750,000 of federal expenditures during the year. You all had just under $1 million of federal expenditures this year. Almost all of it were the funds that you all received from the coronavirus relief fund, the CARES monies that you all received. As was the case with the financial audit, we are issuing a clean or unmodified opinion on the single audit as well. Second compliance report that we issue is the Yellow Book report, which is a report on the city's internal controls and your compliance with laws and regulations. I am pleased to report to you all that we do not have any audit findings to report to you all this year, meaning we noted no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in the city's internal control during our audit. And that's definitely worth mentioning. You know, with all the new accounting standards that are being implemented each year, and really just how complex the financial reporting process has become, it's impressive to be able to present to you all an audit that is a clean opinion with no audit findings. So again, congratulations to you all on that. That's certainly something that you all should be proud These obviously continue to be some unique times, but from an audit standpoint, this year was pretty much business as usual. Shay and her staff, they did a great job this year. As always, they're very accommodating, our audit team. They work hard to get us everything, get us all the information that we request, get all our questions answered in order to get the audit finalized by the 12/31 deadline. So again, just a special thank you to your staff for another smooth audit this year. We've certainly enjoyed working with them again this year. Now for a brief overview of the financial statements. Again, you all prepare what is called an annual comprehensive financial report, otherwise known as an ACFR. And an ACFR requires the inclusion of additional information that goes above and beyond the basic financial reporting process or the basic financial reporting requirements. This document is submitted annually to the Governmental Finance Officers Association, otherwise known as the GFOA, where they put it through a pretty stringent review process. Not only their professional staff, but they also have a special review committee that looks at your document. And when they look at the city's ACFR, their goal is not to assess the financial health of the city. What they want to do is make sure that the necessary information is within your financial report, so the readers of your financial statements will be able to do so themselves. And through this review, the GFOA has once again awarded the city the Certificate of Achievement, for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And that certificate is included in this year's report. I believe this is the 35th year in a row that you all have received this certificate. We audit around 150 entities that receive this certificate each year, and very few can say that they've received this certificate for 35 plus years. So again, that's a testament to you all, that's a testament to management, to your finance department, for continuing to go above and beyond the call of duty and above the basic financial reporting requirements. So again, congratulations to you all on that. This is an impressive document. It's certainly one that you all should be proud of. Brief overview of the financial statements. As you look through your report, one section I always like to point out is the Management's Discussion Analysis, otherwise known as the MD&A. It's on page 5. I think it begins on page 5 of your financial statements. It's right behind our audit opinion. I could certainly understand you all not necessarily wanting to read all 125 pages of your financial statements cover to cover. But if you would, I would strongly encourage you to read the MD&A. The purpose of the MD&A is to make it easier for a broader audience to use and better understand the city's financial statements. And it does this by providing an explanation of the financial statements from the perspective of management. So again, it does a really good job of introducing and summarizing the basic financial statements, as well as providing an analytical overview of the financial activities that occur throughout the year. So again, if you can, I would strongly encourage you all to take the time to read through the MD&A. Now the city's basic financial statements, they are broken up into 3 components, the first of which being the government-wide statements. Now the government-wide statements, they provide a broad view of the city's operations in a manner similar to what you would see in a private sector business. All the funds are either combined either under a governmental activities column or your business type activities column. I have a slide here that summarizes the city's financial activity from the government-wide perspective. And as you can see here, city ended the year with assets and deferred outflows of resources of around $77.5 million. Of that amount, approximately $45.5 million are your capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation. You all had just under $13 million in liabilities and deferred inflows of resources, which resulted in an ending net position of approximately $64.6 million for the year. Total revenues, they're around $26.8 million for the year, while your expenses were right at $20.6 million, which resulted in an increase in your net position of approximately $6.2 million for the year. When you compare this to FY20, when you all actually had a slight decrease in your net position of $86,000, it goes without saying it was a really good year for you all, for the city overall from a financial perspective. So, revenues, they were up approximately $2.5 million, while expenses were down about $3.8 million, which again resulted in that $6.2 million increase in net position that I mentioned earlier. So again, that's a brief overview from an entity-wide perspective. That being said, this is really the only time you'll see the the city's financial activities reported in this manner. In the day-to-day operations of the city, the focus is more so on the individual funds themselves. Which brings me to, again, the second component of your financial statements, which are the fund level statements. Again, this is what you all typically see throughout the year. This component focuses on individual parts of the city, and it reports the city's operations in more detail than that of the government-wide statements. And when you talk about all the different funds of the city, if I'm in your shoes, a primary interest to you all, to me, would be the general fund. It's the main operating fund of the city, and therefore that's where the majority of your revenues are received and funds expended. We have a couple charts in the next few slides that break down the general fund's revenues and expenditures for the year. And as you can see on this slide, general fund revenues were approximately $14.2 million. That's an increase of around $1.3 million compared to prior year. Obviously the majority of the general fund's revenues are derived from taxes, which total around $11.3 million for the year. And that represented around 80% of the total revenues for the general fund. Property tax, when you look at the taxes, property taxes were just under $4 million. Sales taxes were around $3.4 million. And other taxes were just under $4 million for the year. When I talk about other taxes, that's your franchise taxes and your insurance premium taxes. Another revenue source worth mentioning, which you all typically always have, transfers from the water sewer fund to the general fund, was to the tune of $1 million during the current year. This next chart presents the general fund's expenditures by major function. Expenditures were just under $12 million, which was a decrease of around $960,000 compared to prior year. As you would expect, public safety, public works, and general government represent the majority of these expenditures. Public safety was around $7.4 million, so that accounted for approximately 60% of the general fund's total expenditures. And that percentage is really right in line with what we see of other governments of your size. Public works expenditures were just under $2 million, and your general government expenditures were around $1.5 million, both of which were relatively consistent with prior year. So in total, the general fund's fund balance saw a pretty significant increase this year. Increased by just over $2.2 million for an ending balance of 4.7. And the chart that I have here shows the general fund balance history over the past 5 years. In my mind, it's always interesting to look at these type charts, just kind of see where you were and see where, and compare it to where things currently stand. And as you can see on this chart, relatively flat over the past 4 years, but a pretty significant jump in your general fund balance for FY21. So that's certainly good to see. When I talk about fund balance, one thing I always like to mention, fund balance is not what you all have in the form of cash to spend as you see fit. Fund balance is merely the difference between assets and liabilities, only a portion of which is cash on hand. Additionally, one thing to keep in mind, the general fund incurs expenditures of approximately $2.6 million per month. Approximately $1 million per month. So, you all ended the year with an unassigned fund balance equal to approximately 4.5 months worth of operating expenditures. And what that means is if the city closed its door on June 30th, it could continue to operate for 4.5 months without any additional revenue source. And that's really important. With you all having a June 30 year end, it's good to see that the city has a strong fund balance as of June 30 to kind of cover those months of July through November when your revenues are typically down before you get your property tax revenue in. So again, $4.5 million fund balance for you all, representing 4.5 months worth of operating expenditures. That's a strong fund balance for you all for a June 30 year end. A couple other funds I want to briefly mention are your enterprise funds, which again are your water sewer, your solid waste, and your stormwater funds. Again, enterprise funds, they're used to account for operations in a manner similar to that of a private sector business. The goals of these funds are to be self-sufficient, meaning that they generate sufficient operating revenues to cover their operating expenses. And as you can see on the chart on this slide, each of those three funds continue to do that this year. Water and sewer fund had operating income of just under $1.8 million. Your solid waste fund, it was essentially flat. I think it had operating income of $1,200, so we'll just call that flat for the year. But and the stormwater fund had operating income of $290,000. So again, all three of these funds were self-sufficient and generated positive operating cash flows. So again, that's certainly what you all want to see out of your enterprise funds. One final item to discuss is just certain information that the auditing standards requires that we communicate to you all. Again, with you all receiving a clean opinion with no audit findings, the information on this slide is essentially a formality. But again, we had no difficulties in dealing with management. We had no disagreements with management. We had no uncorrected misstatements. And again, we are independent of the city as required by governmental auditing standards. And with that, unless anybody has any specific questions, that concludes my presentation. Again, as you can see, there's a lot of information in this report. What I've tried to do is hit the highlights of what I think is of most importance to you all. But if anybody has any questions on anything I didn't touch on, I'll be happy to address those. But again, I feel like this year's audit went extremely well. Very, very good year for the city from a financial standpoint. We appreciate the opportunity to be of service to you all and look forward to working with you in the future.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but it's something I wanted to say, and I
Sure.
hope it's not out of order. But I would like to say thanks, Shay. The 35 years, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
I just want you to stand up. Just stand up.
That's good right here. Yeah. All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
There they are out on the wall for y'all to
Yep.
enjoy.
All right.
We are very fortunate to have
Very-
Shay in the finance director's position.
Very much so, and our staff.
Very impressive, very impressive. And again, we do thank you, Ms. Shea, for all that you do. Thank you, Mr. David, for coming and giving us that report. You all have received a copy of the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 council meeting. Are there any corrections that need to be made?
Well, one other thing I'd like to say, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Okay, let me,
While we doing this recognition, don't do it. All right, go ahead, don't do it.
hey. Is that, okay, you all have received a copy of the minutes of the February 8th, 2022 council meeting. Are there any corrections that need to be made? Is there a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So move. Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Ms. Walden, Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. We don't have any old business, so we can move to new business, and I will ask the clerk to read ordinance O-2202-02 by caption as the first reading.
An ordinance amending the ordinance passed and adopted on the 10th day of December 2002, known as the Land Development Code of the City of Milledgeville, Georgia. The ordinance rezones property located at 1010 North Clark Street from CC to MR2.
All right, this ordinance is assigned to the planning and zoning. I will ask the clerk to read resolution R-2202-07 by caption.
A resolution to authorize an agreement with the Georgia Department of Transportation to include the replacement of city-owned water and sewer lines within the scope of their contract to reconstruct the Barrows Ferry Road Bridge where it crosses Tobler Creek.
You have heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
All right, the resolution is adopted as official. I will ask the clerk to read Resolution R 2202-08 by caption.
A resolution to authorize an agreement with Simonton Engineering to provide the engineering services to include field site and plan review, bid package preparation and solicitation, and construction administration and inspection, all as is associated with repairing the Carrington Woods Dam.
You have heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. I'll ask the clerk to read Resolution R 2202-09 by caption.
A resolution to authorize an agreement with West Hancock Holdings LLC to authorize a property lease for the city's continued use of a portion of the parking lot behind the building located at 118 South Wilkinson Street as an improved surface for a trash compactor serving portions of downtown Milledgeville.
You have heard the resolution. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted as official. We have one new alcohol license application to consider, and I will ask the clerk to please present the application from Rebecca Osnu.
That's what I'm gonna pronounce it. This is for Rebecca Alzine on behalf of Splat Crash Bang LLC, doing business as Dungeons and Daiquiris, and this is for a beer and wine consumption on premises and alcoholic beverage catering license.
You have heard the application. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
Aye.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
Application is approved, and I would like to welcome Dungeons and Daiquiris to downtown. The last item we have on our agenda is not to select, but have you all chosen your mayor pro tem?
I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Chambers be our mayor pro tem.
Got a motion on the floor, gonna let it die.
Second.
It's my second.
I
Okay,
do.
okay.
Ms. Shinholster seconded?
She seconded,
Okay.
yes, okay. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Dr. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Mullins,
Do not walk in dark alleys.
Aye.
Mr. Chambers,
I abstain.
Ms. Walden,
Aye.
Ms. Shinholster,
Aye.
Mr. Reynolds.
Aye.
All right.
Mr. Chambers is announced last week that he was retired, so we got to give him something to do.
Oh, I have plenty for him to do, don't you worry.
As long
Welcome.
as there's not a wake-up time, I am good, because I'm getting real used to not getting up at 4:30 and 5 o'clock.
All right, well, Mr. Chambers, welcome to being the mayor pro tem for the year 2022. I can't get this together. Looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes, wait a minute. No, I think we need to back up. We missed something. Mr. Griffin, I'm sorry. Did we recognize Dr. Lee from last month receiving her award for 200?
We did not.
Okay. So Dr. Lee received her award for having achieved the 276 hours. Is that correct? What's the
I
award?
don't remember.
She said she don't remember.
A lot of them.
Well,
Certificate of-
she has received her award and joined the elite with Miss Shinholster and Mr. Mullen. So congratulations to you on that. Thank you so much for serving.
She received her certificate of dedication.
Dedication, that's what it
That's
is.
it. Okay, good deal.
I'm trying to catch up with her.
Right behind you. I'm right behind you. Thank you.
Good for y'all. I'm trying to find another one.
Good deal. All right, then that concludes the items on the agenda. Are there any comments or announcements? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, we stand adjourned.